The world's oceans are littered with evidence of massive earthquakes, mysterious floods of biblical proportions, ancient tsunamis, mega disasters that have destroyed entire ancient cities and caused them to sink beneath the waves. Now, all over the world, scientists are setting out to discover the secrets buried on the sea floor, in their search for the lost cities of the deep. The legend of Atlantis, an earthly paradise that existed before the great civilizations of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. A mega metropolis destroyed by a natural catastrophe, now submerged beneath the waves. But in their search to explain the legends, archaeologists are finding that truth is as strange as fiction. Entire cities really were lost to the oceans through one or more ancient catastrophes, and only now are their secrets being revealed. Are these ancient Japanese pyramids 8,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt? Are they the remains of the world's first city, or are they just strange natural formations? Off the coast of Britain, another discovery could reshape history. Have divers found evidence that the biblical flood of Noah was real? From India, and one of the oldest civilizations in the world, comes a story straight out of Indiana Jones. This spectacular temple has stood for over 1,000 years, but legends passed down from generation to generation since ancient times tell that it was once one of 7 that have mysteriously disappeared. Now, under shark-infested waters, the riddle of what happened to them may be solved. Off the coast of Israel, researchers are discovering evidence of a miracle invention over 1,000 years ahead of its time: concrete that sets underwater. One of the first places to look for ancient underwater cities is along the coast, at the sites of ports. And none are more famous in all antiquity than this one on Egypt's Mediterranean coast. Founded by the most successful general of all time, Alexander the Great, the city still bears his name: Alexandria. At its height, Alexandria was a bustling super city, one of the largest in the known world. It had one of the biggest ports in antiquity, with 200 cargo ships said to have passed through its harbour walls daily, twice as many as pass through New York's harbour today. The harbour's beacon was a 400-foot-high lighthouse, the Pharos of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For 1,000 years it stood as capital of Egypt and one of the greatest and richest cities of the ancient world.
In its heyday, Alexandria must have been the most fantastic place to visit. It was very rich, it was very sumptuous, and it was a real magnet, so anyone who was anyone came here.
But the city did not stand in isolation. Alexandria formed part of a massive built-up development along miles of coastline, not unlike the continuous band along America's northeastern coast. But incredibly, next to nothing remains of this metropolis. Today, the coast is bare. How did it disappear? The answer lies under the Mediterranean Sea. Around 12 centuries ago, a massive earthquake rocked the North African shore.
Alexandria, unfortunately, was built in a high seismic area, which suffers from a lot of earthquakes. In fact, between the 4th century AD and AD 1400, there was something like 23 earthquake events historically recorded.
In 365 AD, a destructive earthquake accompanied by a huge tidal wave killed over 50,000 Alexandrian citizens, sending most of the city's famous landmarks to the bottom of the ocean. And it's here that scientists must begin the search for Alexandria. Their quest begins as far away from the seabed as it's possible to get. Here, geostationary satellites of the type used by the US military are equipped with high-powered scanners and cameras, capable of seeing what lies beneath the waves.
This is a satellite view of the west of the delta of the Nile. You have here Alexandria, and here the Bay of Aboukir. And in color, you have all the sunken land that we have discovered below water.
Using geophysical data from their satellite surveys, Frank is able to build up an accurate picture of the ancient topography of Alexandria.
Let us zoom now on Alexandria site. On this satellite view of the modern city of Alexandria, you see in yellow all the sunken land and port structure, which are now under the sea.
The mapping of Alexandria has revealed new information on the sunken city. Its infrastructure is larger and more substantial than researchers had previously believed. Due to poor underwater visibility, the teams diving the area are constantly faced with the problem of pinpointing their excavation sites.
We have developed specific tools for positioning, like underwater differential GPS, which a precision of a centimeter, and it's extremely efficient for contours of land and etc. When you are doing a specific excavation, we put grids like on land, and it's easier, of course.
Without this technology, Frank's team would be fumbling around for needles in a haystack. Now they have a meticulous process that requires great patience and care. Using a water dredger, a kind of underwater vacuum cleaner, the archaeologists remove the sediment in search of artifacts on the seabed.
The potential for sites underwater is that they have not been looted for centuries like some sites on land. And furthermore, it's a totally empty space. You can go wherever you want. You don't have a road, you don't have new buildings. You are absolutely free to expand your excavation into a direction you want to go.
At depths of between 10 and 20 feet, the excavations of 2007 have provided further clues to the port's destruction. Byzantine gold coins dating back to the 7th and 8th century AD are being uncovered. No artifacts of a later date have been unearthed, leading the team to believe that the areas of the port that survived the destruction in the 4th century were finally submerged in the 8th century AD. But it's not only small objects like these beautifully preserved golden rings that the team discovers. Egypt's underwater sites are littered with large sunken treasures, including sphinxes, statues, and stone blocks, complete with royal signatures and hieroglyphs.
On Antirodos Island, we have discovered a small sanctuary of Isis with a beautiful statue of a priest of Isis, very well preserved sphinxes. On the Poseidon, we found a full walled temple.
The new findings echo the descriptions of Strabo, the Greek geographer, who visited the city in 25 BC. Unlike those ancient sites on land, the artifacts waiting to be discovered underwater have for centuries been free from looting, offering archaeologists a fascinating insight into Alexandria's once glorious past. The team have discovered over 10,000 artifacts from their 3,500 dives, but this is only the start.
The work is ongoing, so there's still many, many more treasures down there. But in a way, I think that's one of the romantic things about Alexandria. It's almost like Atlantis. It really is a lost city.
But despite its fame, Alexandria is not the largest port in antiquity to mysteriously disappear. Off the coast of Israel, archaeologists are searching for evidence of a huge harbour wall. Hundreds of blocks, some weighing up to 50 tons each, lie on the seabed and are believed to be part of a 2,000-year-old port. The New York harbour of its day, that now lies 25 feet beneath the Mediterranean. Can our team of underwater detectives unravel the mystery of the disappearance of the ancient world's largest harbour and unlock its engineering secrets that have been lost for thousands of years? Secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of technology in the ancient world. The Ancient Discoveries team are in Caesarea, modern-day Israel, the site of the ancient world's largest port, investigating its disappearance into the sea. This incredible port protected up to 300 ships and opened up the world of travel to thousands, kick-starting trade networks and ancient immigration in the Roman Empire.
This was the first globalized empire, and to globalize an empire you have to have great forms of communication, from your roads that we all know about to actually the ports itself. You need central ports that can take the supertankers of the age filled with the fruits of globalization.
Caesarea was named after Julius Caesar. It was built by the Jewish king Herod to be the major port in the Roman Protectorate, Judea, and the largest port in the eastern Mediterranean.
The harbor itself was unbelievably huge, big. Nobody could see such a big structure worldwide. It was the largest structure on Earth at the time. 90,000 square yards, that's a huge area.
Trade from as far away as Burma flowed across Asia and the Middle East to satisfy demand in the major European cities of Athens and Rome. This trade needed a mega port. Thousands of men were recruited from all corners of the empire to begin the 12-year project.
He created water breaks that was 180 feet wide, huge. You could have a highway on top of it. And it extended deeply to the sea, almost half a mile into the sea.
The eastern Mediterranean can be rough. A powerful wind blows up from the continent of Africa every summer, whipping the sea into a frenzy. The engineers needed to create a massive solid breakwater to protect the ships that lay within the port. To solve this problem, they used cutting-edge Roman technology, a substance that most people would believe is a creation of modern engineering: hydraulic concrete, a technological advancement that underpins all of today's major harbors. Professor Robert Hohlfelder has been investigating how King Herod's Roman engineers created concrete that, incredibly, could set underwater.
I'm standing today in front of a large kiln at a cement factory where we are attempting, or this company is attempting, to reproduce what nature had done for the Romans thousands of years ago. Perhaps we'll be able to learn something from the ancients by studying the Roman concrete.
This modern plant in the UK takes limestone from the nearby quarry, then filters and mixes it with alumina, silica and water. In a massive industrial rotating kiln that uses extreme pressure and heat, it binds the materials together to create the mortar.
The Romans had the same product, but not this facility. They didn't need it. Nature provided them with a volcanic dust, which they call puis puteolanus, a sand, we know it as pozzolana, found in the Bay of Naples.
Whilst other ancient civilizations understood how to make mortar, the Romans were the first to create what we understand as concrete today. They added rubble to the mix, or what is also known as aggregate. The mix underpins all the Roman superstructures built during its imperial heyday, like the Pantheon that still stands in Rome today.
And my task in the last couple of years, starting with my work at Caesarea, was to see how the Romans extended this architectural revolution into the sea.
The Romans were faced with a problem at Caesarea. How do you make concrete set underwater?
What appears to happen is that after the concrete sets underwater, the pores of the concrete are so small that in a sense the concrete becomes impervious to the action of the sea.
King Herod's engineers understood the waterproof qualities of the concrete and set about devising construction methods to build the gigantic port at Caesarea.
Herod made the world's first artificial port in history ever. And he did that in a very novel way. He didn't take some kind of technology from the land and apply it to the sea. Instead, he used floating chests. They sound quite simple. These 45-foot-long chests, which were really gigantic, with wooden sides. And those were constructed on shore, towed into position. And they make a whole series of those arcing out to create a breakwater.
The hydraulic concrete was poured into these chests.
As that set, these wooden chests would descend onto the seabeds and create a beautiful platform for the superstructure of the port.
Incredibly, this process is still used today to build modern breakwaters for the world's great ports. But there still remains much mystery surrounding the disappearance of the ancient Caesarea harbour into the Mediterranean.
When you're at Caesarea now, you only see a very small harbour, a modern fishing port with some Crusader remains on one side. But the main harbour is completely submerged. And if you swim out over it, it looks like a natural reef. It's only when you look closely at the rocks that you realise actually it's not rock at all. It's concrete under a marine concretion.
Dr. Ehud Galili is one of the world's leading underwater archaeologists and has been researching Caesarea for the last 25 years. His main focus has been to search for clues to the mystery of the port's destruction.
The magnificent thing is to go down to see the anchors and the stones still standing in situ, very well preserved, to see the towers, to see everything that was left by the Romans. After 2,000 years, we can still touch it and see and feel what they have seen and what they have felt here when they were here.
Dr. Ehud Galili and his team are coming to the end of their quest to uncover the secrets of this lost superstructure. They've discovered the harbour remains at depths of around 25 feet and have been searching for physical clues as to why the blocks are submerged. Over the centuries, a theory has emerged that, like Alexandria in Egypt, an earthquake destroyed the harbour. The team has pieced together the clues and found that this is unlikely.
There was a theory that a geological fault caused the subsidence of the west side of the harbour and caused the destruction. Today we are convinced, more or less, that the damage or the subsidence of the harbour was due to the fact that the harbour was built on top of sand and it was the foundation subsided and settled inside the sand.
Evidence from the seabed is suggesting that the ancient world's first artificial harbour, built with hydraulic concrete, gradually sank over 100 years before it was lost to the sea. The world's first high-tech megaport sank because it was built on sand. But ports are not the only megastructures that underwater detectives are exploring. In India, the hunt is on for the legend of the Seven Temples, one of the world's most mysterious cities in the shark-infested waters of the Indian Ocean. The Bay of Bengal, 800,000 square miles of shark-infested waters. Predators include the notorious man-eating bull shark. It's here that tropical storms, with rotating winds blowing at speeds of 80 miles an hour, bring hurricanes and storm surges to the coast of India. On its southern coast, local myths tell of a lost city submerged beneath the waves, a metropolis littered like the legendary Atlantis with palaces and temples. The writings tell of a once flourishing ancient city, known to those who visited as the land of the Seven Pagodas.
William Chambers was the first person to pick up all these strands of these stories and point out that actually we can only see one pagoda today. Was it made up? Was this one pagoda so beautiful and stunning that it got extended into this figure 7, which has always had a supernatural religious importance? Or, as he suspected, did the other 6 pagoda temples slide at some point beneath the waves?
The myths, still repeated by local fishermen today, speak of 6 temples submerged beneath the waves, with this temple the only one still found on the shore.
There were once 7 temples. 6 of them are now underneath the water. Everyone believes they are lost temples.
Ancient texts have revealed to archaeologists that Mahabalipuram was once a flourishing ancient port that reached its apogee in the 8th century under the rule of the Pallava kingdom. This powerful dynasty ruled southern India for 600 years. It grew rich through the control of important trade routes, most notably the spice trade of the Far East.
In the ancient literature, Mahabalipuram is described as a very important port town. Of course, as on date, we do not know where this port was located.
Today, Mahabalipuram is a bustling town with a population of nearly 12,000. There are intriguing clues about the town's glorious ancient past. These beautifully preserved ancient structures, known as the Five Rathas, date back to around the 7th century and were built at the same time as the missing temples. The complex is carved out of single pieces of granite rock, a technique that was used for over 1,000 years by Indian architects and engineers. One of the most impressive structures to adorn the town is one of the world's largest bas-reliefs. It also dates back to the time of the missing temples. This magnificent relief, carved in the mid-7th century, measures nearly 1,000 feet long by 45 feet high and covers an entire hillside. It's this structure that may hold the key to the whereabouts of the lost temples. Known as the Shore Temple, it's one of the world's greatest ancient treasures and a sacred site that has attracted pilgrims for over 1,000 years.
Local people believe that this is one of the surviving temple. Remaining temples have been damaged or they have been lying submerged in the sea.
If this is one of the mythical 7 pagodas, legends tell that it was once surrounded by a complex of beautiful palaces and spectacular temples built with the wealth of the Pallava kingdom. A complex on a par with the ancient world's most spectacular sites like the Acropolis and the temples of Karnak. So are the myths a reality? How could something on the scale of the Acropolis have left no trace?
There seem to be two processes going on here. First of all, there's coastal erosion. We know that the sand is eroding away about 1.5 feet every year. So that means 1,500 years ago, the shoreline actually would have been something like 1,500 feet further out in the sea.
The eroding shoreline in the area may be responsible for causing the temples to collapse into the sea. But archaeologists have another theory for their disappearance: a huge wave.
The tsunami of 1797 is recorded as having picked up a ship of 200 tons and thrown it 1 kilometre upshore. So vicious was the killer wave. And it seems very likely these were responsible, whether in one episode or multiple episodes, we don't actually know yet, for the destruction of the 7 pagodas.
This is not the only tsunami to hit the region. The 2004 Boxing Day tsunami sent huge waves of over 100 feet to the shores of 11 countries, killing over 200,000 people. It also hit Mahabalipuram, wrecking the shoreline. For a few minutes after the first wave, the sea receded more than 500 yards from the shore, and before it returned, local fishermen stood face to face with the answers to this 1,000-year-old legend. Mysterious structures long buried beneath the sea.
After 30 minutes, go down very far away, again coming water, rolling water, come up. Because I'm a fisherman, we can, I save my things, but my boat, my nets, other village people coming just looking for a temple.
Captured here by an eyewitness for the few minutes that they were exposed, this extraordinary photograph reveals the structures as the sea receded. Anandan was on the beachfront as the tsunami approached.
Daughter, they held a daughter, and also my wife take my son. Possible temple, yeah. The 7 temple in the water, under the water.
In this eyewitness image, the tsunami wave is seen here moments before it crashes against the Shore Temple. The Shore Temple survived, the impact of the giant wave being taken by a sea defense wall. The question now facing archaeologists is, are these submarine structures a solid clue that an ancient city lies beneath this turbulent sea? Dr. Alok Tripathi is one of India's leading underwater archaeologists and has been searching for the realities behind the myths. Although the seas are rough, Dr. Tripathi has enlisted the help of local fishermen to show the Ancient Discoveries team where he has been excavating.
In this area we have got a number of submerged rocks which are quite high, and their tops are visible during the low tide, and found that there are certain human activity on these rocks. This is the second outer ridge. One is very close to the shore temple. They are low-lying and they are not exposed.
Located 100 yards north of the shore temple, the top of the structures can be seen at low tide. It's a difficult site to excavate as the water is shallow and surges with each breaking wave.
The diving there was not technically difficult on the basis that it was deep, but in fact, because it was so shallow, in 5 to 10 meters, right at the edge of the Indian Ocean with huge swells coming in, it made it very, very difficult to be stable in the water and to hold on to things.
Trevor is an experienced underwater photographer, trained to dive to depths of over 300 feet. He's dived at the site in search of the missing temples.
What we were looking for initially were the evidence of that it was man-made.
Archaeologists are faced with the challenge of proving how these structures in the water relate in shape, size and date to the temple complexes found just 70 yards from them on the shore.
The Shore Temple, which essentially is a large megalithic structure surrounded by a low-profile wall, that was very much what we were seeing initially on the seabed. We had these blocks in straight lines that correlated very strongly with what we were seeing at the Shore Temple.
From the underwater search, there appears to be initial evidence of stone masonry, remains of walls and rectangular stone blocks.
We were coming across other suggestions that they were man-made, where the blocks were very sharply cut and set into other larger blocks, which was fairly good evidence of a man-made structure.
Archaeologists attempt to relate the findings to the one surviving temple.
It's very clear these are man-made, and the architecture seems to fit exactly with what we're seeing on land. So was the myth of the Temple of the Seven Pagodas real? Absolutely.
Underwater archaeologists are just beginning their investigations, mapping out what lies beneath the waves in search of this legendary city. Off the coast of Britain, divers are investigating a global flood of biblical proportions, one that could change our understanding of history. Have they found archaeological evidence of the flood of Noah? Myths and legends of cataclysmic floods exist in all ancient cultures. The Old Testament has the tale of Noah and his ark, but every civilization tells the story of the great flood that wiped out all but a few survivors. The ocean filled vast basins in matters of weeks, in catastrophes that are unimaginable in today's world. But did these events spark the flood myths found in all cultures?
It doesn't take a lot of great imagination to understand the impact that these melting ice caps would have had on these communities. We have historical texts preserved in Mesopotamia and in Israel, in India, and as far apart as Mexico. It's very positive to say that, yes, this was their global flood.
Divers off the coast of Britain have discovered intriguing evidence of a town submerged beneath the sea that may hold the secrets of the mythical flood. Just off the south coast of England, the Isle of Wight is separated from the mainland by a narrow strait just 40 foot deep.
The Isle of Wight at the moment is possibly one of the most enticing, fascinating sites in England.
The divers drop into the cold waters of the Solent. The work here is dangerous. The current in the straits can reach 3.5 miles per hour. A good human swimmer would have to swim with all their strength just to stay still. At the seabed, they reach the site.
That black patch is all burnt. This is where the fire was. The base of the fire was here.
Dr. Gary Mumba is leading the investigation.
I discovered this underwater settlement after looking for it about 2.5 years ago and discovering part of a hearth, a fireplace underwater.
The strata, the levels are very, very narrow, and whereas on land you could use a pick to excavate a Roman town, for example. If you use similar methods underwater, you'd go through an entire 1,000-year level.
The team have marked out a grid on the sea floor. They carefully analyze each square's contents, looking for evidence of human activity.
Just here, we might be able to see evidence of more burning.
They remove the sediment from the seabed in search of artifacts. Over the millennia, the underwater environment may have preserved clues. Back at the surface, samples are sieved. But what evidence will the mud reveal?
What I got here is a little flint tool. It's been deliberately made from a block of flint. They've shaped it and chopped this bit out, and then they can use it as a chopping implement. It's very fine, very distinctive marks on the side, and it also looks like it's been sharpened. It was found next to this piece of wood, and this piece of wood also has cut marks in it. Now, I suggest it's probably used for food making, and on it, it's got some cut marks straight across the top here. It's been sliced off. Now, that was buried deep in the sediment over 8,000 years ago, and it's just been recovered, and you can still see the cut marks on it.
Other samples have produced further evidence of human settlement at the site, dating back 8 millennia. But are there suggestions that the residents were forced to flee a cataclysmic flood 8,000 years ago?
There's a human activity layer under there. Yes. All these mollusks eat their way through it. Oh, I've been an smudger and work. We have the old landscape. We have it covered in vegetation and trees. We have the underlying geology, and above that we've got marine sediments, which show exactly when the sea came in and how it did it. And we got the dates for that about 7,950 years ago, I'd say.
This site dates to around the Middle Stone Age, the Mesolithic. They were hunter-gatherers who moved across the landscape following the rhythms of the seasons.
The evidence found at the site reveals a time before the English Channel existed and when Europe and Britain were joined. But after the melting of the ice caps, which covered most of northern Europe, sea levels started to rise and the settlement was buried beneath the sea. The Isle of Wight site is strong evidence of human settlements being destroyed by ancient floods. But the legends relate stories of whole cities being obliterated. What evidence is there of ancient cities being wiped out by floods or rising sea levels? Off the coast of Japan, a furious debate is raging. 80 feet below the surface, at a place called Yonaguni, lies a mass of provocative evidence. Could these steps be elements of a construction that formed part of a huge city temple complex beneath the sea? A mega metropolis that dates back 10,000 years. This would make it the first city man ever built. And if the residents were capable of this miracle, what other lost secrets might lie beneath the waves? In 1985, divers discovered these mysterious formations on the sea floor. The enigma of their origin remains a controversy amongst scientists and archaeologists.
Yonaguni is a freak of nature, or is it a freak of man? It is the monster of the deep. It is the Frankenstein of marine archaeology. It's this monster that up till now, nobody's been able to crack. You would need a Sherlock Holmes and an Agatha Christie to put on diving gear and get down there. It's that complicated.
For some scientists investigating the area, these geometric lines suggest that the structures are man-made.
It is a complicated stepped pyramid structure, built to provide protection from enemies, it seems.
But more incredibly, some scientists believe these structures may date back thousands of years, to before the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, completed around 2500 BC.
At one time, it was thought they might be as old as 10,000 years. But as we have accumulated more evidence, I have come to think that it was constructed over a period of time between 3,000 to 5,000 years ago.
But other researchers have greater doubts.
Well, what is this site? I memean, that is the $6 million question. This just completely runs contrary to anything that's ever been found beneath the sea. We have now fine settlements in Nagasaki Prefecture beneath the sea, and we know what they look like. And these things are dominated by pottery and flints and finds. problem is, at this particular site, Professor Kimura, there is no pottery, there's no material culture.
What has amazed scientists studying the area, but also cast doubt as to whether it's a man-made site, is the pure scale of the structures lying beneath the waves. The biggest structure is 600 feet wide and 90 feet high.
When you go down eerily under great visibility on Yonaguni, you have this massive site which initially looks like a pyramid in the deep. It's something like over 900 feet wide, and it's intercut along its edges with these horizontal planes, completely smooth, and then walls going up at complete 90-degree angles.
Labelled as #1 monument, or Yonaguni Underwater Pyramid, it looks like a stepped pyramid which investigators believe closely resembles a giant Gusuku from Okinawa, which still stands today. The Gusuku is thought to be a mixed structure, part castle and part temple.
In the case of Okinawa castles, this could be a sacred site like a tomb. This is reminiscent of a pyramid. It's basically what we have here.
These perfect rectangular corners make it difficult for some researchers to believe that this is a natural occurrence.
When you look at these surfaces, which are very smooth, they kind of look like negatives. And I wonder whether in the medieval period this site was actually on land, and that what we're looking at here is a medieval quarry, and the stones were taken from here to the castles on Okinawa, and that is what has given this particular site its character. And I think that's something that geologists and archaeologists need to explore.
If Professor Kimura's theory is right, the site at Yonaguni is evidence of an advanced civilization predating Egypt, the first civilization recognized by most historians as capable of such massive building projects.
This is a portion of the Yonaguni site, a 300:1 scale model taken from our surveys. You enter part of a loop that circles the entire site. Here the path climbs and is met by two large sculptures. Past them is the tomb area. This is the most sacred area, we think.
The loop road described by Professor Kimura that surrounds the complex has intrigued underwater archaeologists. Its widest part measures 15 yards. Through their investigations, scientists believe they have uncovered evidence of an arched gate at its entrance. With the proposed loop road connecting all the structures at the site, the underwater region has city-like attributes. This kind of structural engineering, if proved man-made, demonstrates a civilization using techniques and technology that was advanced for its time, but was then lost. Only 100 miles to the north of Yonaguni, Professor Kimura is searching for more evidence of massive underwater constructions.
At Shatan, there are what we believe to be ruins. They have been visible for 10 years, and we've been trying to certify what they are.
The Shatan site is situated off the island of Okinawa in Japan. The Ancient Discoveries team is launching a dive in search of the structures using a remote-controlled robot sub to guide the camera right up to the site. Teams of trained divers and underwater cameramen prepare to use the latest in diving technology. The remote-controlled robot submarine allows underwater archaeologists to record high-definition images at depths of more than 1 mile beneath the waves. Professor Kimura is leading the search. Attached to an umbilical cord, the remote-control camera feeds images back to the boat. The visibility is remarkably clear at this site, allowing the divers to fully investigate the submerged ruins. Approaching the site, they find the structures that are believed to be man-made. Underneath the barnacles and coral, the divers investigate the wall-like formations. Professor Kimura believes the structures they are investigating at the site are similar in their construction pattern to those found on the islands of Japan.
What we are seeing here is something like a castle or a fort. In China, there are structures like stepped pyramids, and this resembles them. There is also a marked resemblance to the foundations of castles at Shuri and Nakakasuku.
Could castles like this have once existed thousands of years ago on the islands of Japan, only to be lost to the depths of the ocean? Were they the centerpiece of a lost city?
The ruins at Chatan were submerged about 2,000 years ago, at the same time as Pompeii was buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the Mediterranean. It was the same tectonic plate movement.
It's incredible to think that the submarine structures at Chatan may be linked to a catastrophe that wreaked havoc across the globe.
I hope that with this investigation, we are able to access the effects of tectonics and global warming on the loss of civilizations.
In the last 2 decades, archaeologists and scientists have made extraordinary leaps forward in our exploration of the seas. They have unearthed stunning underwater structures, pyramids, statues, streets and settlements. They have transformed our understanding of history. Yet this is just the beginning.
We think we know everything about the sea, but actually we've only just started to scratch the surface. In fact, we know more about the moon and the face of Mars than we do on the world's oceans.
In the 21st century, our greatest ancient discoveries will likely not come on land, but at the bottom of the sea. And with the threatened rise of sea levels through global warming, will our modern-day cities one day also be submerged beneath the waves?